Hey fellow Fungus Festers, this is Nikki. Today I'm going to show you how I marinate mushrooms. Well, actually I'm going to show you how I pickle mushrooms, adding some oil to make my product richer and more elegant. I've always thought that it's the oil that turns pickle juice into a marinade, so I call my pickled mushrooms marinated. But first I want to show you my house. This is Zwerver, that means wanderer in Dutch. She's a Dutch sailing barge. I've lived on her in Prince William Sound for over 25 years. I cruise around all over, changing my backyard every few days. Maybe 15 years ago, I happened to be in Cordova for their Fungus Festival. I had so much fun and learned so much that first year. I've only missed 2 festivals since. Fall has turned into a special mushroom time for me. September through November, my focus has become learning about mushrooms and perfecting ways to enjoy them. I spend my winters in Valdez, South Harbor. It's a beautiful place to hang out and enjoy my preserved mushrooms. Look at those mountains. This is Swerver's Galley. As you can see, it's not very big. If I can put up mushrooms on board, anybody can do it in a normal-sized kitchen. I've tried several methods of pickling and decided I like the quick refrigerated method best. The mushrooms don't need to be brined, and they don't need a hot water bath in a big kettle. They do need to be kept refrigerated. So here in my tiny galley, I get all my stuff and ingredients gathered together. In this slideshow, I'm going to demonstrate making one 24-ounce jar. I often make 2 or 3 jars at a time. It just depends on how many mushrooms I have. I used recycled jars and lids, sterilizing them by boiling for 10 minutes. I've successfully marinated yellowfoot chanterelles, hedgehogs, gypsies, fried chicken, mushrooms, and crogomphus. Sometimes I mix species together in a jar, depending on what size jar I have. I wasn't so successful at marinating king and admirable boletes. They tasted okay, but they were way too slimy for my taste, so I won't marinate them again. I like my boletes sautéed or dried. The lids must be the self-sealing type. You know, the ones with the little rubberized ring inside the rim. The center pops up when first opened and the seal is broken. This is what about a pound of washed chopped mushrooms look like. These are Hydenum panum, or hedgehog mushrooms, cut up in chunks. Little mushrooms can be left whole. Some folks scrape teeth off the mushroom caps, but I leave the teeth on because I sort of like seeing them floating around the jar. Most of the teeth actually do stay on the mushrooms once they're cooked. You'll see that these mushrooms will really shrink when they're cooked. Believe it or not, they'll all fit in that one 24-ounce jar. I use white wine as my pickling liquid. It adds flavor and acidifies the liquid. I started using a very dry white wine, but last year I tried Moscato wine, which is quite sweet. I liked it. Feel free to try different wines. About a quart cup of vinegar, either white or apple cider, 5%, kicks up the acid. The lower pH helps inhibit bacterial growth. A quarter cup of oil for 2 cups of wine makes pickled mushrooms marinated in my book. It's important that you use a vegetable oil that doesn't solidify when cold. The oil should lightly coat the mushrooms as they are lifted from the jar. Unwinterized olive oil solidifies to blobs of fat clinging to the mushrooms. Not appetizing at all. I know because my first batch of mushrooms with extra virgin olive oil was really yucky. It tasted great, so I kept trying till I figured out to use oils that have had the waxes removed like most salad oils have. Brown or white sugar helps take the bite of the vinegar and bring out the mushroom flavor. Salt enhances the flavor and helps with the pickling process. I really like garlic. I slice up several cloves, paper thin. They add flavor and look neat in the jar floating around among the mushrooms. If I have it, I thinly slice fresh ginger too. Red pepper flakes, they add a bit of zing. You can leave them out if you don't like spicy, or you can add more. Sometimes I leave out the pepper flakes and add thinly sliced jalapeno peppers instead. Obviously, I like spicy. I've experimented with several types of pickling spices, including making my own combination. I got this brand at the bulk food store in Valdez. Fortunately, I liked it because it comes in a big jar. I keep it well sealed in the freezer in the winter. This is the third season for this jar. It still smells very potent when I open the lid. If you're pickling large smooth mushroom pieces, the loose pickling slices will sort of stay at the bottom of the jar. But they get all mixed in with the teeth and gill folds of hedgehogs and yellowfeet that I pickle most of the time. It's no fun to bite down on a mustard seed, clove, or peppercorn, so I like to make little packets for the spices out of a piece of muslin or an old dish towel. I fold a little square and stitch up the sides. If you're not into stitchery, just make a little pouch of fabric or cheesecloth and tie it up with a piece of string. So much for the ingredients. To make more room on my counter, I mix everything into the bowl of wine, and I set it aside while I'm removing the moisture from the mushrooms. First, dry saute the mushrooms by piling them into a pan. Dry saute means cook the mushrooms without oil, extracting nearly all the moisture from them. Usually sauteing involves a frying pan, but this pan here, it's nice and tall, holds lots of mushrooms and fits better on my tiny stove. I do this remove the moisture step because if I started cooking raw mushrooms in the pickling liquid, all that mushroom water would dilute the wine and vinegar, raising the pH. The less acid solution wouldn't do the pickling preserving business as well. Also, the flavor of all those ingredients would be much wimpier. Start cooking on low heat. Increase the heat while pressing the mushrooms down into that mushroom juice. When the liquid is all boiling, the mushrooms have given up about as much moisture as they're going to. Remember how high they were all piled into that pan? Scoop the mushrooms into a strainer or colander. Press and squeeze some more moisture out of them. You can save the liquid for soups or stews. I often cook rice in the mushroom water to add umami to whatever rice dish I'm making. Look at those squeezed mushrooms. That's the original bowl underneath. They really shrunk. Sometimes at this point, if I don't have time and my act together to complete the process, I put the squeezed cooked mushrooms in the refrigerator for a couple of days. Then I heat and jar them with the spices and wine. They keep much better cooked than uncooked. Remember that bowl of wine and spices? Well, now it's their time. Stir to get the stuff on the bottom mixed in before pouring the liquid into the pan. Bring it to a boil and simmer for about 10 minutes to mingle all the flavors. Take those squeezed mushrooms and put them into that pan of hot spiced wine. Bring the liquid back up to a boil, simmering for another few minutes to make sure the mushrooms are really hot when you scoop them out into the jar. Don't squish the mushrooms down. They should be fairly loose so the flavors can reach everywhere. After the mushrooms are in the jar, go back and heat the liquid to boiling again and fill the jar with that boiling pickling fluid. completely covering the mushrooms. If there isn't enough liquid to cover, top off the jar with a little boiled wine. Wipe the rim of the jar dry with a clean paper towel. Screw the lid down tight. Set the jar to cool until you hear the cap pop, indicating that there's a good seal. Wait at least a day before eating to let the flavors meld. Sometimes I turn the sealed jars over a few times to circulate that flavorful liquid and oil through the mushrooms. Marinated mushrooms with crackers is just about my favorite. With cream cheese, too. I also put them in salads and sandwiches. For a fancy presentation, I enjoy the mushrooms with olives, pickles, cheeses, meats, and other goodies on an antipasto platter. So that's it. I'll end this slideshow by paraphrasing my hero, Chef Jacques Pepin. I can't do a French accent, but I hope you'll enjoy making marinated mushrooms with your friends and family. Happy cooking!